Good afternoon, everyone, on this Friday, August 17th. I am so pleased to welcome to the program Mr. Rob Arlett. Rob, how are you today?
I'm great, Jason. It's an honor to be here and of course with your audience. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I'm delighted to have you, Rob. Many people may not have heard of you. You are running, of course, for U.S. Senate in the great state of Delaware.
Yes, sir. The first state.
The
All others
first
fill
state.
after us, just for the record, right? So,
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of people didn't even realize that Delaware is the first state. I know we have a lot of corporations that are formed in Delaware. I
sure.
presume that's because of tax benefits, but you and I were brought together by a good friend of this program, former FBI agent Michael McMahon. And everyone who watches Crowdsource the Truth knows that Michael is a staunch enemy of corruption. He is a whistleblower who stood up in the FBI, and he's now heading up your campaign. Isn't that right?
He is actually. He's my chief of staff, and we are so very honored to have Mike be a part of this movement. It's really it's not just a movement here in our state of Delaware, but also throughout the nation, and that is, of course, to expose the corruption and the cronyism that exists at all levels of government. So absolutely.
Yeah, and we need a powerful advocate in the Senate now, probably more than ever. Rob, I know you're a family man of Christian faith. You stand for integrity, and you are an anti-corruption candidate, and that's why I wanted to have you on the program. We want justice in Washington, D.C. How can we break through this bipartisan corruption?
Well, it's called principles, Jason. We've got to get back to the principles and really our Constitution. I think all answers will be solved if we follow the Constitution. So yes, we are a married man to my wife of almost 29 years. We're very proud and very excited about that. We are a father of two sons. We have a 27-year-old son who was very involved with the president's campaign, also a political appointee in Washington. He's come back out on the private side to help us in our campaign. And then we have our youngest son, who is just entering his second year at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland.
Wow.
So we're a big military family, a big family man, as you say, very proud Christian, a faith person, small business owner, and also I'm an elected official, Jason. I'm also currently an elected official here in the state of Delaware, and we crossed that grain 4 years ago when we were told not to run, I will say, for the office that I hold today by people in my own party because of fear of retribution and fear of rocking the boat, if you would. And so we have continued to be the anti-corruption, crossing of the grain person, and we're very proud to do that. Now moving on to the U.S. Senate.
Mm-hmm. And can you share with us some of the things you've been able to accomplish that I love it when people tell me, hey, you can't do that, or don't do this, or don't run for that, and then you do it and succeed. Give us a little bit of that story.
Sure. Several years ago, I was asked to run for public office here in the state of Delaware, specifically a state representative office. We chose not to do that at that time because we were focused on caring for parents. We were literally responsible in caring for parents at that moment. And so we chose not to. We got involved at the party level, at a very small level here in Delaware. Fast forward about 2 years, there was a person that was running for re-election at a county council level. And he is a 16-year incumbent Republican, a sixth generation Sussex County, i.e. local boy. And there were some allegations, some very serious allegations against him. And I was just told, don't you dare run against him. And nobody would do it. Nobody would step up. And I chose to make a decision based on principles and nothing other than that. So we did so with little money to no money, no real support other than true grassroots, Jason. And we beat him in double digits. The Democrat, of course, we moved on to the general election. Somebody that was very well known, somebody who was a business owner, somebody who headed up our planning and zoning commission here at the county level, again, was told I had no chance. Well, I beat that individual by over 20%. As a matter of fact, he didn't even win his own polling location. So he didn't win one polling location, as a matter of fact. That was 4 years ago. So we proved everybody wrong. I will share with you, after being in office for 1 full year, I got a text message, Jason, on January the 6th of 2016 asking if I supported Trump. This was candidate Trump at the time.
Yes.
And I said three letters, Jason, and that was YES.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize those three letters would perhaps change my future, because I ended up being the state chairman for the Trump campaign here in Delaware. We were very involved, first person in our state to be involved publicly supporting and endorsing our president. So we have been involved since the very beginning, pushing the envelope here in the great state of Delaware, and for that matter, really around the nation. And then, of course, our son ended up being the state director after the RNC convention in Cleveland, which I was a chief delegation whip. I also emceed the president's rally here in Delaware. I was the guy on the stage, rallying the troops at that rally back in April of 2016. After our president won, I ended up being a part of the presidential inaugural committee in Washington, D.C., whereas I headed up all of the municipal governments throughout the country, county governments, city governments, town governments. So any and all things inauguration, I was that go-to person for the inauguration. So, and then of course, Jason, then people ask me well, you need to run statewide in the great state of Delaware because you have been a true trooper, a champion for the people. And of course, that's why we are here today sharing with you. So we are the U.S. Senate candidate on the Republican ticket. I do have a primary. We have an election in just 20 days is our primary election. We are very excited, very confident of where we are. There has been a real politics poll recently, about 2 weeks ago, whereas it has me beating my primary opponent, and just 8 points away, Jason, from Senator Carper.
Wow.
And so single digits. We have
That's
tremendous
impressive.
It is. So people are ready for change in the great state of Delaware because we have truly been under one-party rule for so long. The cronyism, the corruption has been rampant, I believe, in our state for too long. And again, that gets back to why I chose to hire Mike as my chief of staff, so he can help to expose what's been going on in our state.
Right, and of course, Mike was the whistleblower who brought to light the shortcomings in the name check process within the FBI, the failure to vet certain people who were getting security clearances, and that is now a topic of the day, of course, with Mr. Brennan having his security clearance revoked and being very defiant, saying he will not relent. I don't think he realizes that Donald Trump is the democratically elected president of the United States, and I do want to thank you for supporting Donald Trump. I think we would all be in a really scary situation right now had his opponent won. So thank you for supporting President Trump.
I also want to share with you, Jason, that I come from a military background. I used to be an intelligence specialist back in the Navy Reserve some years ago. So when it comes to security clearances, I used to have a top secret security clearance. So I have that background. Along with Mike, as you know, Mike was a naval officer, intelligence background as well. So we kind of have that in common as well. And so, he has to understand, Mr. Brennan has to understand it's not his decision whether or not he holds the security clearance or not. It's not an entitled thing, it's an earned thing. And truth be told, he lost it based on his own actions. Based on his actions is why the security clearance was revoked. And surprisingly, I will let you know, I think it should have been done much earlier than what it did.
Agree completely. Now, Rob, you raise a really important point. I did an interview with Bill Binney just a couple of weeks ago, and Bill, of course, was a whistleblower within the National Security Agency, and Bill was a 30-year veteran of that agency, an Army veteran before that. And what Bill shared with me was that throughout the course of his 32 years in that highly secretive, extremely powerful government agency, he saw it turn dramatically from an agency that served the safety and the concerns of the people of the United States into an agency that was just filled with private contractors whose desire for money seemed to supersede their desire to serve the interests of the American public. And we know that once a corporation gets involved with something, a corporation has many of the characteristics of a person under the law, but of course it lacks the most critical, which is morality. So I personally find it extremely troubling that the United States government, and particularly the military and clandestine agencies, are subcontracting so much of this business out. We've seen this take a very dark turn, particularly in the 2016 election, and all of this, let's call it what it is, this witch hunt that has followed. Things like, Sean Henry leaving the FBI to form CrowdStrike with Atlantic Council members like Dmitry Alperovitch, and then CrowdStrike being utilized by the FBI to conduct investigations in a way that I am virtually certain is designed to sidestep laws and checks and balances and protections that U.S. citizens are supposed to enjoy relative to these clandestine agencies. Can you tell us what you might be able to do as a senator to combat these types of things? I mean, that's corruption at the root. We've got to really stamp it out.
Well, I think it gets back down to, again, I think all things will be solved once we follow the U.S. Constitution, Jason.
Right.
And I think, when I raised my right hand as the next U.S. Senator from the great state of Delaware, that's exactly what I will do. I've done it twice already, once in the military uniform, once in my current office that I hold. We'll do it for the third time. So to me, that's the litmus test for all, is the U.S. Constitution. And what has happened is cronyism and corruption has gotten into the federal government. And you have people, careers, not all, there are some majority of those that serve in our federal government truly are patriots and truly do care to serve the American people. I really do believe that. But it comes back down to those that are charged to do the right thing. And really what it's become is a political arm. It has become a political arm of power and corruption, as evidenced by the ongoing information that comes out. That's really what has happened. They no longer are following the U.S. Constitution. They are no longer following principles. They're following power and corruption. And that's what it comes down to. They don't care about doing the right thing, Jason. They just care about control and keeping of their power. So what I will do as the next U.S. Senator is take all of that out of the equation and focus on one thing. That is the principles that they are charged to do. I don't care your personalities. I don't care your political affiliation. If you're doing something that is wrong and illegal, then you will be paying the price accordingly. Just as I did back as a U.S. Naval Intelligence Specialist. We were granted that access, the security clearance, with a needs-to-know basis.
Right.
If we had done one inkling of what Hillary Clinton had done, we would have been escorted out of the building, perhaps, and put in jail.
Of course.
No question about that. So why is it okay for some political elites, but not for the rest of us? Again, right. We have to get focused back on the principles at hand versus the party affiliation and corruption that exists. So that's my job, that's my responsibility, is to uphold the U.S. Constitution and hold those and those agencies accountable thereof. And
yes.
We will do that.
Yeah, and I'm showing everybody a picture of Mr. Comey right now because he's one of these individuals who seems to be doing things that he should not be doing. I do want to remind our viewers that if they aren't following Rob on Twitter, they can do that. He is at Rob Arlett, and even if you don't live in the state of Delaware, you can help Rob win the Senate seat by going to his website. Whoops, I'm showing the website for the incumbent right now, who we're going to talk about in a moment. But you want to go to robarlett.com, and you can donate there at the website if you are so inclined. And of course, even if you aren't in the state of Delaware, it is important, if you support President Trump, that we have a Republican Senate and a Republican House, so that we don't have this logjam type of bipartisan, obfuscation and stalemate that is frequently holding up things from happening in the U.S. Congress.
Sure, Jason, if I may, to address what you just shared, this is a national race. It is elected by the people of Delaware, but this truly is a national race with national implications. And what's so wonderful about Delaware is that we are small. I will share with you. We are a small state with still less than 1 million people. We've got about 950,000 people in our overall state. Obviously, about half of that are registered voters. About a quarter of that are registered Republicans. So it takes a very little to make a big change and to make a big difference in our great state. I grew up in California. As you know, my dad was a career Navy guy, so most of his career was down in San Diego.
Hmm.
So if you look at a Senate race across this great country, you know, you can spend $20 million in a Senate race in California and lose,
Wow.
right? You could spend $1 million in the great state of Delaware and win. And so ultimately, when it comes down to conservatives and Republicans throughout the nation, this is a national race with national implications. Because the last I checked our U.S. Constitution, we have 50 states, and each state has 2 U.S. senators, and they each carry the exact same weight when it comes to voting,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make a difference as far as I'm concerned, whether you're from California or Alaska or Texas or Delaware. We are all part of the movement of anti-corruption and being principled people. So we have an opportunity to flip a blue state right here and right now. So I would encourage your listeners and your watchers to be a part of this movement nationally because it has national implications.
Right. And if people are nearby, they can go and visit you at it looks like there's a peach festival tomorrow in
Yeah.
Middletown.
It's fully great retail politics, of course, here in our great state of Delaware, and you can travel up and down the state in 2 hours one way. And so yeah, we keep our public events on our website. Obviously, there's so many more meet and greets at people's homes and businesses, stuff like that are privately. I've got another one later on today, and we had one last night upstate. And so, but yeah, we would love to have folks volunteer. They can go to our website. You also can click on volunteer, be a part of a phone bank. If you live in the surrounding states, certainly feel free to come here and help us to knock on some doors. Again, this is truly an opportunity to turn this state upside down, which is really what's needed for the American Constitution.
Right, and I think that a lot of people really appreciate the grassroots nature of what you're doing. $1 million is obviously a huge amount of money to a regular person, but unfortunately, this is the state of politics in America right now. I mean, that's a small amount of money for a Senate campaign, wouldn't you say?
Sure. It was very, very small in the real world of politics when it comes to U.S. Senate race. So, I believe we're the best investment in this country today when it comes to defending the U.S. Constitution. And again, you've got 100 U.S. senators, so and each carries the exact same weight, and each has the same responsibility. So we have an opportunity here and now to flip a Democratic seat that's been in Democrat control for 18 years by the current person who holds that seat, who has been very ineffective, who has been removed from the Delaware people, and that's truly why we are running, because it is time to put our first state first, and truly put the people back in charge, and that's what we're excited about doing.
And that's Senator Carper, who's been there for 18 years?
It is. He's actually been an elected official from our state for 42 years. He is the epitome of the swamp. He is the epitome of the need for term limits. Yes. I will share with you, Jason. And so absolutely, he has just, he is the epitome of term limits and the swamp. He is the definition thereof.
And if my friend Charles Ortel were here, we would be looking up Tom Carper and the Clinton Foundation. Are there any connections there?
Well, as we continue to do our op research, I think I'll let that be known to Mike McMahon, and I'm certain that he will do some further investigation with regard to that. But yeah, he is really a corporate Carper. He's been bought and sold by the corporations. If he was a NASCAR driver, he would be full of decals, and that's the image that I think that American people need to understand, is that our elected officials no longer serve the people; they serve the corporations and those donors. And so that's the difference between our race and all others, is that we are the true grassroots effort. And of course, he continues to receive dollars from corporations and PACs, and they own him. I want to be bought and sold by the people who I serve.
Yeah, that's an important point, Rob, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because it's the same sort of thing that I'm trying to do with Crowdsource the Truth. I think if we have news outlets that are owned by billion-dollar corporations, and as they consolidate, Comcast and Time Warner and Viacom and all these huge billion-dollar corporations, they control the nozzle through which information flows. And even in the case of YouTube, owned by Google, we've seen Alex Jones be shut down last week. And whether people like Alex Jones or not, do we really want a billionaire corporation or the billionaires that advertise on there deciding what we get to see and what we get to hear? Or do we want to make our own judgments? It's the same sort of thing with the Senate. I don't really want a senator that's going to be serving Halliburton and Exxon and major corporations. I'd prefer a senator, no matter what state that person is in, to be serving the people. That's what these jobs are intended to do. These representatives are intended to do. It's been so bastardized over the years as money has polluted politics. So I appreciate what you're saying.
And it's actually getting worse, Jason. If 30 more seconds, I know you want to cover another topic perhaps, but most recently, I'll share with you, it's big pharma and the pharmaceutical drugs in our nation.
Yes.
It's the fastest segment of our healthcare industry that is exuberantly expensive. And it's because, and many of your listeners and watchers may not realize this, but the Congress had passed a bill some years ago allowing kickbacks. Did you know that? Kickbacks, and the pharmaceutical drugs are now controlled by just 4 companies. 70% of all the drugs, pharmaceutical drugs in our country, are controlled by four companies.
Wow.
And the expense that is there is exuberant because of all the administration and all of the kickbacks to the politicians. So the pharmaceutical drugs has become a pay to play. And it's at the cost of the American people. And that's something that I'm going to bring to the table when as a new U.S. Senator. I will outlaw kickbacks and no longer permit them. That has been the number one reason why the expense is where it is today with the pharmaceutical drugs, and Congress has permitted it. Shame on them.
No, it's a big topic, and thank you for bringing that up. There was, of course, that exclusive report on, I believe, CBS News, where a former DEA agent attributed the opioid crisis to the pharmaceutical companies in Congress, the exact point that you're raising. So, I mean, again, sometimes these problems are complicated, but solving them is, the solution is clear, but getting to it is problematic because these wealthy corporations have create a monopoly in the media, so they are able to control what people perceive is going on. They've created a monopoly in Congress by financing the campaigns of complicit individuals. So I think people really need to be looking at candidates like Rob Arlett, because Rob is not being financed by big corporations. He's got a grassroots approach to his campaign, and people can follow him on Twitter at Rob Arlett. And you can also go to robarlett.com and donate to the campaign. Even if you aren't going to be voting in Delaware, you can help Rob in his campaign to try to assist the president in draining the swamp. So Rob, let's talk again for a moment about our mutual friend, Mike McMahon. Mike, of course, was a whistleblower within the FBI, and most recently he's been working with Chuck Grassley to try to get a bill put into law to protect the whistleblowers. And this is so important to everyone because within our clandestine agencies, the first, last, and only line of defense between corrupt individuals who might infiltrate those organizations and the people of the American public are whistleblowers like Mike and Robin Gritz and Kevin Shipp and Michael Dick. And in each of those cases, and there are many, many more, we've heard how these whistleblowers have had their lives destroyed by the agencies that they're trying to stamp out the corruption within. How can we protect these whistleblowers, and how will you do that for us as a senator?
Well, exactly that. I would also introduce a bill or co-sponsor a bill to do just that. And it's sad you even have to have a bill to do that.
Yes.
I mean, truth be told, again, I think solving all the issues is just following the U.S. Constitution. Why do we need another bill to protect doing the right thing? Think about that for a moment. Why do we need a bill to protect somebody from doing the right thing? It makes no sense. Truth be told, but we have got to ensure that those who expose the corruption and the cronyism are protected. Because, as a matter of fact, I think they ought to be the ones that continue to lead the charge at all of the agencies.
Yes.
Because that's how you get rid of them. I think they're the ones who should be advanced. We all know that typically when somebody does something wrong, they're the ones that get elevated, right? Get promoted. As anybody who's paying attention over the last 10 or 20 or 30 years in governments, typically those who do things wrong are the ones that are elevated to being charged. Well, I think we need to reverse that trend. Those who are following principles and following the U.S. Constitution are the ones that need to lead these agencies and be the example for all others to follow. So I will be a champion for our whistleblowers to ensure that they are absolutely protected.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael McMahon, of course, is an important member of that whistleblower community. Hopefully he can be reinstated to the FBI along with agents like Robin Gritz. I'd love to see a new level of management at the FBI that is staunchly anti-corruption in contrast to what we have going on right now. Obviously, Mr. Comey has been accused of leaking information to the press, including Ben Wittes. There's a very bizarre transmedia campaign that happened in 2017 after the death of Peter W. Smith that's been suddenly and conspicuously revitalized in a way that certainly leads me to believe that there are people who would like to try to attribute this alleged Russian meddling to the activities of a man who is now dead, not because he actually did the things they're accusing him of, but because he's not here to defend himself. So definitely supporting the honest members of the FBI, which, as you point out, is the overwhelming majority, is very important.
Absolutely. And they truly are patriots, and we appreciate and love what they do, but we have got to call out those that are doing wrong. We have got to call out those that have their own personal agendas over the work of the American people, and that's what we are truly talking about. And I think it comes, Jason, down to, it's just like very many elected officials, right? Many get into office because they truly, I believe anyways, they truly have a feel for wanting to serve the people. Once they get in office, all of a sudden they start to shift, right, and change the way they do certain things to get reelected, and they want to keep their control and keep their power. I think this is no different when the career government workers, if you would, stop serving the American people and start to hold on to that power and that control and start to change their philosophies and change their principles. And that's really what it comes down to.
Right. There are a number of people who fit the description that you've just given us. Of course, we're looking at James Comey right now, and Andrew McCabe was very notably removed from his deputy director position at the FBI. Of course, Robin Gritz has told us about how Andrew McCabe tended to operate in his very vindictive nature. It's strange to me that it seems that some of these individuals have what in the corporate world might be considered a golden parachute. In the case of James Comey, he had this book deal. Suddenly he's writing a book and he's traveling all around. Andrew McCabe, of course, we heard raised over $500,000 in less than a week's time through a GoFundMe campaign. And now we've heard that Peter Strzok is doing essentially the same. Why are these individuals able to do that? And don't we need some more scrutiny and auditing on these types of sort of out-of-nowhere deals that result in these guys getting rich when they really should be getting indicted?
Well, exactly. We're rewarding for bad activity. And how does that make sense? And again, I think it gets back down to it's using their political their political positions for personal gain. It gets back down to that. They did it while they were in the government, and now they're doing it on the private side. And I think if we need to do something and create a bill to prevent that from happening, then we need to. Again, it's sad that I'm not a big government guy. Obviously, we like to have a smaller governments and put more control in the people's hands. But at the same time, people have got to be held accountable. They should not be using what they accomplished through the public sector for personal and private gain. And I think we have to get back down to ensuring that happens. So I would certainly promote that and ensure that happens.
I agree.
And then indict them.
Yes, absolutely.
And let's enforce the laws. What a concept in America, right? Let's enforce the laws. Let's hold people accountable. Let's ensure we have transparency. So because it gets back down to entrusting those that are charged to serve the people. And if the American people no longer have trust, the system is broken. And that's really where we are today. That's why we're running.
Right. Now, President Trump's so-called travel ban was recently upheld by the Supreme Court, and it's been really spun by the news to try to make it into some sort of a racist sort of a thing. But I think if we really look at the content of what's there, it was a protection against allowing unvetted people from countries that the United States has been at war with or has identified as serious problems in terms of terrorist activity. This seems like a prudent step in my view, as does having and upholding laws relative to immigration. For instance, I can't just go to France or Germany or Holland and decide, hey, this is a lovely country, I want to live here and get a job here and start taking jobs from people who are citizens of that country without abiding by the immigration laws of those countries. And I certainly don't think those laws make any of those countries racist, but yet there's a lot of people who feel that it's everyone's right to just come to the United States to enjoy the roads, the hospitals, the police services, the fire services that all citizens pay for, and that it is their right to do that without adhering to immigration laws. What can you say about that?
Well, I think that I applaud the president. As an elected official, in my mind, all elected officials, be at all levels of government, Jason, to include towns, counties, states, and federal government, their number one responsibility when you raise that right hand, right, is to protect the people whom you were charged to do so. Public safety, I believe, is number one responsibility after, of course, following the U.S. Constitution, but number one responsibility. So I applaud the president, and that's actually one of the reasons why I chose to get involved to be his state chairman, because he was the most vocal about border security than any of the other candidates. This is a little personal for myself and my family, Jason, because my wife came here as a legal immigrant. She was not born in America. She was born in Vietnam. And she is just a beautiful woman. She and her family followed the American laws to be here and to become naturalized citizens. And so if it's okay for them to follow the laws, why isn't it okay for others?
Yeah.
And let's be real here. I'll give you the best example that I know how to give, and it seems people understand this. We all do a lot of flying, yes? And when we fly into our country, we have a process that we go through. We go through security checks. They want to know who you are. They want to know why you're here and how long you're going to be here, correct?
Yep.
We all get that, and we follow those rules with no question. So why does it matter if you fly into this country or if you walk, if you swim, or if you drive, right, into this country? Does it make a difference how you get here? The fact is, if you're coming here, why should we ignore it if you walk into this country or drive into this country, right? Or if you fly into this country?
Absolutely.
Why should it be a different set of rules on how you get here? It makes no sense. No. So we need to know who's here and why they're here.
Yeah, and I would buttress what you're saying, Rob. It's not just this country. In my prior career as a film director and cinematographer, I've traveled the world, and every single country you go to wants to know who you are, where you've been, what you're doing there, who you're seeing there, because they don't want to admit criminals, whatever their ethnicity or national origin might be. And that's a reasonable thing to want. And I think that what people have done is taken some of Donald Trump's statements out of context. I think the mainstream media loves to do that. And sometimes Mr. Trump does speak somewhat indiscreetly, but I think he's been a very effective president. I think his heart is in the right place. And as you've said, there's been so much corruption, and what's been revealed about the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation and the substantial financial crimes, it does seem that we have a large amount of evidence to indicate that billions of dollars have gone into the black hole that is the Clinton Foundation. And so who exactly is motivating the Clintons to do what is a major question, because we see it trickling down. Perhaps these funds are used to pay some of these book deals, some of these GoFundMe campaigns that quite obviously seem like efforts to get these guys to just sort of keep it quiet. Here's $500,000.
Sure. It's definitely it has been a legalized version of pay to play. You
Yes.
pay and then you can play with us if you
Yeah.
would. And I think again that gets back down to and let's be real here, Jason. It has nothing to do with one's skin color. It has nothing to do where you've come from in another nation. It's public safety.
Yes.
It doesn't make a difference what the color of your skin is or where you've come from. We just need to know why you're here. And if you want to do harm to us as Americans, then you're not welcome. I
Right.
mean, it's not difficult. And so some people have made it something different than really what it is. And I would also add that there are people today who accuse the president of what he's doing. And but yet 4 years ago, 6 years ago, these are the same people who wanted and desired a wall to be built. They are the ones who also desired and applauded border security. So all of a sudden now it's a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, for all of us that have served in the service, who understand protecting of the American people, we understand we have borders. So shame on anybody who seems to think that we shouldn't have borders and protect the American people, because when all of us that have worn that uniform, that's why we do that, is to protect us and to protect our borders.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this news article, Rob, but earlier today on True Pundit, I saw a piece about a couple that was trying to prove to either themselves or someone else that evil was some sort of, it didn't exist. So they decided to go on a bike tour through a country that people are warned not to visit because of terrorist activity, and they were stabbed to death. So
I did not read that.
Yeah.
I did not read that. That's horrible.
It is horrible, but it is a word of caution to people that, we want everyone to be friendly and kind and benevolent, but sadly that's not the case. So that is exactly why we have borders and we have laws and we have law enforcement. And to your point about your wife and her family, in my personal experience, the people that are most opposed to the total absence of immigration laws are immigrants who have gone through the process and appreciate the process and are proud to be Americans. It's like anything. You give someone something, they don't appreciate it, but if they must respect it and earn it by working for it, they have a much greater appreciation for it. I don't think we want people to come to the United States and transform it to their country by forcing Sharia law or any of that on us. The United States is a melting pot where we all come together under American values, not the other way around.
It's called assimilation, and the reality is if you're not going to assimilate into the American way, right, and take an oath thereof, because my wife and her family had to do that to become naturalized citizens, then you're not welcome. I mean, again, I don't understand the concept of just open borders and anybody who thinks that they should be able to come here is allowed to be here. I disagree. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws.
Yes.
And so we want the brightest and the best from around the world, because people are escaping their form of governments, and all they desire, Jason, is just the opportunity. They don't have the opportunities in their homelands like we do here in our country. They just desire the opportunities to be able to provide for their families, to have a good quality education, and to really the pursuit, right? The pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
It's the pursuit thereof, which is what our Constitution permits, and it's not a guarantee. It's what you choose to do with it. But we need the brightest and the best from around the world, but we have to understand why they are here, and if they're not going to play by our rules as a nation and assimilate into our way of life, they should not be welcome.
Definitely. I am in total agreement with you. Now, Rob, I don't know if you were following this item. It didn't get as much attention on the scale I would have hoped it would, but Imran Awan, the Democrat IT assistant to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Javier Becerra, he was indicted for bank fraud, and I believe it was just yesterday that his lawyer, Chris Gowan, issued some kind of sentencing statement. Now, it's alleged that Imran Awan was warehousing data from congressional servers and that he may have hacked as many as 80 members of Congress. We identified the possible location of a server at 4809 Sprayer Street. None of this was ever investigated by the FBI. The U.S. Capitol Police turned evidence that we gave them over to the defense attorney. He was given a plea deal that I think most people find. I've heard people who have been covering court cases, journalists say they've never seen anything like it, referring to it as unprecedented. What do you think could be done to prevent these kinds of corrupt findings in our judicial system? And what can be done about Imran Awan? Is it too late for Imran Awan to see justice?
Well, I hope not. I think, the Senate, of course, is charged, as you know, in reference to nominations that the president would put forward as it relates to judicial nominees. And we have to ensure that when that occurs, that we are applying the U.S. Constitution as written and not interpreting it as something different. So it's important that we have, people that are elected into the U.S. Senate who understand the U.S. Constitution and who understand that we need judicial nominees, judges, who will apply it as written and not interpret it as a legislative branch. And I think that's really what we've come down to. So to your point specifically, I would like to see, perhaps a bill who's somebody who does something like that, you throw the key out. I mean, put them in jail forever. Yeah. I mean, why should they get a second chance? Why should they have any lenience at all? Somebody especially, and truth be told, why not the congresswoman who permitted it?
Yes.
Why should she? She ought to be removed, and she ought to be put under grounds from Congress and under investigation, and she ought to be removed from office. Can I be that bold?
I appreciate that
statement. She needs to be removed from office because she did not uphold the U.S. Constitution. She fell short of the American people, and she did not do her job. So I believe that we ought to further investigate her and how could this be permitted, not to mention as a congresswoman, but also, of course, she was head of the DNC, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
At that time. So what is going on in America? Who are these people infiltrating at the highest of levels? And those who are permitting it and allowing it should be held accountable, to include the congresswoman. Shame on her, and I think she needs to be brought under investigation and the grounds for removal of office.
I agree with that completely.
How was that for a statement?
No, that's a very bold statement, and I agree with you completely. I mean, they're trying to get this thing sort of over the plate in such a way that Imran is free and clear. The immunity deal included absolution from any crimes committed from his date of birth until July 3rd, 2018. But I think if RICO were discovered, or if espionage, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, of course, but I agree with you that there is a bigger matter here that needs further investigation, and we certainly cannot have people, as this Luke Rosiak article in the Daily Caller would suggest, we cannot have people in Pakistan remote logging into the U.S. Congress. That just seems like far too great of a security breach. The guy had Debbie Wasserman Schultz's password and all kinds of things going on.
Crazy. And it makes you wonder. I mean, they're all hung up on quote unquote Russian collusion, right, with the presidential campaign. There's not been any evidence, but yet here there is real evidence of real foreigners infiltrating our government and elected officials at the highest of levels. Why is there not the outrage? There is evidence. There is raw, real evidence there. Nothing on the Russian side. Again, it gets back down to principles, Jason, principles, right, and not the party affiliations. Yes. And I think we've got to get back down to just doing the right thing. The American people deserve that from the elected body, and we, the elected body, have got to do our part to ensure that we follow through. I'm not somebody who thinks we just need to have a whole lot of hearings without prosecution and without results. Mm-hmm. I think we have it's called follow through, right? Yes. And so we need to follow through to ensure that the corruption is brought forward, and then they are absolutely prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And if we need to change the law to make it more harsh, then that we as Congress need to do that. We have to protect the American people.
I love what you're saying, Rob, and if I could move to Delaware to vote for you, I would do that, because you're talking sensibly.
You're welcome to. You are welcome to. I'm sure you have an audience in Delaware, but you certainly can impact it by many ways by sharing the story, our great story here in Delaware, that we're finally going to start to put this state back in the hands of the of Delaware families.
And not just the state, but just setting the Senate on the right path. As you pointed
Absolutely.
out, we've seen no evidence of this so-called Russian collusion. However, the very day after Crowdsource the Truth presented very compelling evidence of a possible server being stored in a shed at 4809 Sprayer Street, the disgraceful Washington Post and its reporter Sean Boberg wrote this article about a federal probe into House technology worker Imran Awan, yielding intrigue but no evidence. I mean,
Yeah.
that is not just irresponsible, that is straight up publishing a story to counterpunch the actual story that we brought forward. And of course, the Washington Post has much greater reach than Crowdsource the Truth. So for our friends who are watching in Delaware, it's extremely important that you get out and vote for Rob Arlett for U.S. Senate. And if you're not in Delaware and not able to vote for him, but if you agree with what the candidate is saying, you should go to robarlett.com and donate to the campaign so that you can assist him in his run for Senate. Rob, what would you say is the best way that people can help with the campaign in the last few days here?
Sure. I think you just shared right there, Jason. The best way to do it is really this is a national movement. It is a national movement of transparency and accountability with the U.S. Senate, and for that matter, the elected body. We are that person that's going to bring integrity and honesty back in the political fray. The American people deserve it. They demand it, and that's what we're going to deliver. We need more people like myself running for office throughout this nation, and we just encourage your watchers and your listeners to get to our website, be a part of the movement, get to the Twitter accounts, share all the messaging that's going on throughout social media, because everybody knows somebody in Delaware, right? And so, but you can definitely be involved, volunteering, phone calls, donations. It's not about Rob. I can tell you that right now, Jason. This is much bigger than myself, much bigger than our family, and we're just focused on bringing principles and integrity back to the process and back to the U.S. Senate. That's really what we're focused on doing.
Absolutely. And maybe let's remind everybody when Election Day is exactly.
Sure. It is actually, the primary is on Thursday, not a Tuesday, it's on a Thursday, September the 6th. And we have one of the latest primaries in the nation. And again, one party rule, the Democrats, right? So I think that's by design. And then, but it's okay. So we're confident that where we're going to be on September the 6th. But it's important look, it's all about who shows up to vote.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with who supports you. Has everything to do with who shows up to vote. So we need our voters to get out and vote on Thursday, September the 6th. And then 60 days later, of course, on November the 6th is the general election. And we look forward to taking down whomever the Democrat opponent will be, because Senator Carper is also being primaried. I will share with you, in case you were not aware of that. He's being primaried by a far-left, progressive, biracial, lesbian socialist. And
what does that mean, primaried?
What's that?
What does that mean that he's being primaried?
He has an opponent on a Democrat.
Oh, so he could get knocked out by another Democrat.
Yeah, he has a Democrat opponent. He also has a primary, and this is from the same mold from the gal who won the congressional primary up in New York. What's her name?
Yes, the
Cortez.
young Cortez, right? The young woman,
So
right? Who
she
we
is
found was
this-
financed by Soros.
Exactly. So they actually are bussing in people, Jason. They are bussing in people from New York to help this candidate beat Senator Carper. So he's being moved further and further left in his own primary race. And so I've always believed, I will share with you, that if we were to jump into this race, and we have, that I believe that this Senate race would be ground zero of the 2018 election cycle. You understand the dynamics here?
Yeah.
You ourselves and our family, our involvement with our president and the movement that's been going around this nation. And then on the other side of the aisle, the Democratic, who is the number one voice in the entire country today from the Democrats? Who would that be?
Maxine
None other than Vice President Biden.
Right.
And where is he from? He
Delaware.
is from Delaware.
Yeah.
So then you've got Senator Carper, the established, entrenched swamp. And then you've got his opponent, who is the far left progressive socialist. So you can see all of the pieces of the puzzle coming to a hedge right here in Little Delaware. So your audience can make a difference and will make a difference by being involved. So we look forward to carrying our message throughout this nation and throughout our great state of Delaware. And truly, it's been an honor. I have to share with you, Jason. It's truly been an honor.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you. And so, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would seem that the Democrats introducing this other candidate would potentially make this the perfect scenario for you because, well, I guess if she wins the primary, he's out, or
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, again, he's getting pushed far left, and can she win? I don't think anybody believed that the Congresswoman candidate up in New York would win, right?
Right.
But she did. And because we're a true grassroots state, a retail state, and it doesn't take much to make a big change, all things are possible. Absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 20 days.
Yeah.
We're just 20 days away from our primary election, and Senator Carper is fearful, not just of maybe somewhat of that opponent, but I would say more so of our candidacy, because when we announced back in April our candidacy, he came out swinging against me, Jason, the day of. Senator Carper came out swinging against me. And that's very unusual for a 42-year incumbent in public office. Normally they would ignore another opponent, but he came out swinging against me. And of course, the next day he did a big email blast to his database, a fundraiser, stating that, I'm the Trump guy and I don't qualify to run for office because I'm the Trump guy. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. Yeah.
And so that's what we're working on here in the great state of Delaware.
Wow, that's just so stupid that's what they go to right away. You're supporting the president, so you can't possibly be elected.
Exactly. How is that possible? And I'll also share with your audience, because they don't necessarily understand Delaware politics, but 2 of our last 3 U.S. senators came from county government directly into the U.S. Senate. So current, it's very common for a county elected official, to go from that level straight into the U.S. Senate. Senator Coons, the other U.S. senator from the great state of Delaware, also was a county commissioner and went straight into the U.S. Senate. The one prior to him was none other than Senator Joe Biden.
Wow.
Joe Biden was a county commissioner and went straight into the U.S. Senate when he ran some years ago. So 2 of the last 3 U.S. senators from our state were county officials and went straight into the U.S. Senate. So it's very common.
Wow. So perhaps someday we'll be speaking with presidential candidate Arlett.
Well, let's get through the September the 6th campaign first, my friends.
Right.
Beyond that, it's my desire to follow God's will and truly to be a blessing to others, and that's really where our heart is. Beyond that, it's up to the man upstairs to figure out that, but our job is to act and to move, and that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. I really appreciate what you have to say here, Rob, and I'm so glad we were able to have you on to help you in the campaign. People, of course, can go to robarlett.com and you can learn more about Rob and his campaign. You can donate to the campaign whether you're in the state of Delaware or not. If you like what Rob is telling us, you can help him unseat the Democratic incumbent in the state of Delaware and add a man of integrity to the U.S. Senate, something that we need now more than ever. Rob, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me this afternoon. Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
I'm just seeking and encourage your watchers to get involved, because you do make a difference. It is we, the people, that make the difference. And so don't ever think that your involvement does not, because I thought that perhaps 5 or 6 years ago. And when I said yes, and I said yes again, and I kept saying yes to wanting to serve and to be of help, I never imagined and never had the aspirations to be running for the U.S. Senate. But ultimately, it's not about us as individuals, it's about serving the other person. So your watchers and your listeners have to understand that they can and do make a big difference. So get involved at the local level and continue to be a blessing for your own communities, and then allow the Lord above to foster your journey as he has our own, because you'd be surprised perhaps what he has in store. So that's really, I would implore your listeners and watchers to get involved, to make a difference, because they do.
That is great, so great. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate you saying that. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to remind everyone that I will be back at 3 o'clock only on Patreon with David Hawkins and Reverse Engineering Crime Scene Investigations. Rob Arlett for Senate, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, Rob. Best of luck in the campaign, and I hope to see you back when you are a senator, sir.
Yes, sir. God bless you. Thank you so much, Jason. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.